Let's bring in Kevin Clark, host and analyst for Omaha Productions, ESPN, and host of This Is Football podcast here. What do you think Bill Belichick was really saying there, Kevin?
The same thing he's been saying for 25 years, nothing. I think he's trying to treat CBS This Morning and a lot of these other places like he did the New England media, and it's not going to work. Like, that's the problem. In college, you have to go out and recruit. You have to win over the fan base, and he hasn't done that. Like, I think I saw some UNC beat writers saying, like, there was no access during spring. Like, this is not the Patriot way anymore. So what was he saying about Kraft specifically is I don't think he likes him very much. But I think that you have to address that because you have to talk about the elephants in the rooms at this point. When you're selling a book, that's when you address the elephants in the room, Dan.
Yeah, he's just such a bad interview, even when he's trying to be. I'm sure his girlfriend is saying, Bill, let's go over scenarios. And she would play the role of interviewer, right? And she would ask him questions. I mean, I'm guessing. Yes. Like, she's really involved in this, this whole North Carolina situation here.
She seems to be a bad publicist. That seems to be my read on the situation, is that she seems to not have a grip on what questions are inbounds. Also, like, we don't talk about the relationship thing. It's already out there how they met. I mean, you can do this. You can give the people what they want. Give us a little bit of, we met on an airplane, it was love at first sight, the whole thing. This is not hard. They made it hard.
Well, now I really want to know how did they meet? Like, wait a minute, what else happened here? It's like when Tiger Woods and his new girlfriend send out a picture, and then they say, respect our privacy. Respect our privacy,
yeah.
I did respect your privacy until
just now. I no longer respect your privacy.
All right, the draft in Green Bay. Give me the second biggest story of the draft.
Oh, my gosh. Well, first of all, from a college football perspective, you guys mentioned earlier, Quinn Ewers cost himself about $4 million. Okay, like that's an important thing. He could have gone to Miami and the Carson Beck role. There's so many schools, Oregon, who are looking for a veteran presence. So for me, that drop was significant. But, when I look at some of these teams that are building, like I think Washington knocked it out of the park. And I don't see a scenario in which they're not in a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, because I look at Josh Connerly, I look at Trey Amos, who I think is a really good cornerback. The receiver they got from Virginia Tech, who's a great athlete. Like, I'm looking at some of these teams, and I'm just seeing a pathway here. I think the Commanders are doing everything right. They're getting the stadium here today, I guess. They're going to have the new RFK site there. So I think the second biggest thing, aside from Shadeur Sanders, is just some of these teams are kind of building into a Super Bowl contender. Now, I think Cam Ward is probably the second biggest thing because I think he's a Mahomes-like talent. I'm the one guy who's going out there and saying, by the way, the number one overall pick, he's pretty good. I know we don't want to talk about the number one overall pick, but I think he's phenomenal. I went to Miami. I saw every snap from him. I promise. People say, oh, you're a Miami homer. Nobody's hated watching Miami more than me over the past 20 years. Okay, I'm the opposite of a homer, but I just saw what he was able to do on a snap-to-snap basis. And he's able to do. Steve Young was on my show a couple years ago, and he said something about Mahomes I think about a lot. He said, everyone talks about the Superman, but what makes Mahomes is the Clark Kent. The basics, the hitting the guy over the middle, taking the check down. Cam Ward does both of those things really well. I think that's what's going to make him special. I think Tennessee is not going to have the same infrastructure that Kansas City had. So if I say he's Mahomes, it's not going to be the same path because there's no Kelsey, there's no Tyreek Hill, there's no Andy Reid. But I think you're going to see instant success from Cam Ward, and I think he's going to change the Titans franchise. That franchise needs a little juice, Dan. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on there.
The situation with the Browns and Jacksonville with that trade.
Yeah.
Okay. We can take out the talent. We'll start with that and just say, it felt by a lot of indicators that Jacksonville did an incredible job.
I agree.
But Cleveland did an even better job of fleecing Jacksonville.
I agree.
So you think Jacksonville?
So
they both
the deal.
won it.
They both won because the Browns are looking at this and saying Deshaun Watson set us back probably more than the 4 years on the contract. Okay, that's important. They're not trying to win now. If they were trying to win now, they would have drafted Travis Hunter and gone from there. They wouldn't have drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. They wouldn't have drafted Shadeur Sanders in the 5th round. They understand where they are. The Jaguars, again, you talk about a franchise that needs some juice, needs a little, in-market kick in the butt. You got to start there. What's going on in Jacksonville? They have a new coach. They have a new GM. For me, when you have a special talent, the first press conference I was ever at as an NFL journalist was Mike Shanahan right after the RG3 trade. And he asked a rhetorical question. He said, what did the Broncos give up for John Elway? Nobody knew. You know why? Because nobody cared. Nobody was saying, oh, they added, oh, I can't believe they added another second round pick. No, they got a franchise cornerstone. And so with Travis Hunter, if he's the guy you think he is, there's no overpay for that.
But why didn't Cleveland look at the Ohtani of the NFL and knowing that they needed to take away from this Deshaun Watson situation, and you get a makeover right away? I
agree in theory, but I think they're looking at this roster. It's an aging roster that was built around the Deshaun Watson thing working, okay? And I think they have some self-awareness that that's not going to be the case anymore. That the aging roster, some of their guys, it's not ready to win now. So take the Jaguars pick, which is probably going to be a pretty good pick next year, and start building in a different way.
But why not trade Myles Garrett, or why extend Myles Garrett?
I probably would have. I probably would have. I mean, I listen. You're putting yourself. You're doing something very dangerous, Dan, which is putting yourself in the head of the Cleveland Browns and saying, "Let's make some good decisions." They haven't done that for 30 years. Okay, so it's really hard. Like the Dylan Gabriel pick to me was one of the dumbest of the entire draft. What are you doing at that point? And why? We can get into this thing, but why you would take Gabriel, who would have dropped a handful more rounds? He's a career backup when you're looking for a starter. Are you now going to trade for Kirk Cousins? You have Joe Flacco in the room. None of this really makes any sense. It's like, and maybe this is just the product of ownership, Dan, it's like there's 5 different decision makers in Cleveland, and they all get to make alternating decisions. And it's like they've never met before.
Well, you can tell if I look at body language of coach and GM when they made the pick with Shadeur, that came from up above.
Yeah.
Because it almost felt like, oh my gosh, let's draft him. And then let's trade up to draft him when you could have had him. It was Brownsian. It was Brownsian. It was truly Brownsian there. But I do think it's a great place for Shadeur to go to.
I agree.
Because I think he'll play. I think he'll start a game this year.
He's going to be instantly better than Dylan Gabriel. So that's the first hurdle to clear. Dylan Gabriel's not very good. Kevin Stefanski can tell him where to go with the ball. We know that Shadeur can be accurate. We know he can. I mean, my thing about Shadeur, I didn't think he was top 5 level. But what I did think was if you put a lot of those prospects behind the Colorado offensive line last year, they wouldn't have looked as good as Shadeur.
But if I give them the receivers that Colorado had, you're going to look pretty good.
At least one. Yes, I agree with that. When I look at the Shadeur situation, I was texting people in the league in the 4th round and in the 5th round. And I was saying, why don't you guys just take Shadeur? I'm talking about teams with good quarterbacks where it's not going to be a drama. Like, hey, this first round talent is dropping. This seems like value. And they said there were 2 problems. Number one, they didn't do any work on the guy because they didn't think this was going to happen, right? So, like, if you're a team with a franchise starter already, you didn't even meet Shadeur Sanders. You don't even have his phone number. I mean, apparently everybody has his phone number because of Jax Ulbrich. But you just get into a situation where they'd be flying blind. So that was part of the problem. But then the other problem is they just didn't want to disrupt their quarterback room. They don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get Shadeur level production, especially in the 5th round or in the mid rounds, without SportsCenter coming to your camp on day one.
Was this collusion?
I don't think it was. I think it starts with the most basic, obvious thing, which is there were only a handful of quarterback needy teams, and they didn't think Shadeur was that good. I think it starts there, and then it was a cascading series of effects. I do think that there's a lot of cowardice in the NFL where they just don't want distractions, and I think that is more powerful than any sort of whatever. I don't think there was exact collusion where they were staying away from him.
He's Kevin Clark. He is host and analyst for Omaha Productions and ESPN and his must-listen-to podcast, This is Football. And I'm starting, I was just trying to figure this out, that Tom Brady, who's running the Raiders, has been around Shadeur Sanders for a long time.
Passed on him.
Times, and they could certainly use another quarterback in there. I know you extended Geno Smith. That was the one that stood out more than anything. Because Pittsburgh, to me, they take Will Howard.
Yeah.
And I like that pick. I think Will Howard can play in the NFL, but that really led me to believe they really are hoping that Aaron Rodgers is coming to town.
He has to. I mean, and it sounds like, Art Rooney, the owner, a couple weeks ago in Palm Beach at the owners' meeting said that that's the expectation there. I don't think Steelers ownership really talks out of turn, so I assume that there's indications that he's coming. They're screwed without him because I last week I heard some of the insiders say, well, they're really comfortable with Mason Rudolph. Nobody is comfortable with Mason Rudolph, so I knew that was a tell that Aaron Rodgers is probably coming.
how honest, when you know somebody's being honest with you, you talk a lot of coach and GMs and whoever, like, I have 3 different sources in the NFL, and I've had them for probably 22, 23 years. But, I'm fed a lot of information sometimes, and, I've been used before.
In the draft season, it's really hard. Because remember, a scout might tell you this is the best guy in the draft, but he may not have the power to do it. Or, somebody from I'm just giving an example, right? We're talking about ownership coming from above and saying you have to take Shadeur Sanders, if that was a scenario. Well, 5 minutes before that, you could have gotten a text from someone with decision-making power in Cleveland saying, nah, we're not going to do it. And then the owner does it, right? So predicting what's going to happen in the draft is a fool's errand. It's really hard because of just the different things, and no one thought Shadeur was going to happen. By the way, like, everybody's talking about, people were saying, I saw this coming with Shadeur. You didn't, unless you said it was the biggest drop in history incoming, then you didn't see it coming. Yeah. Like, it's saying, he might drop to the second round. Well, he didn't drop to the second round. He dropped to the 5th round, so you didn't see it coming. Predicting what's actually going to happen on draft night, outside of the first pick, I had Brian Callahan, the Titans coach, on my show a couple of weeks ago, and he started talking, and he said, I coached Joe Burrow when he was a rookie, and I went back and I watched the Zooms that we had because it was COVID, so they recorded it, just to get a sense of what a rookie quarterback would be like. And so this is like March 15th, and I'm thinking, Brian, you're probably not doing that if you're going to draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. So I think you may have indicated where you're going. So there's tells like that, obviously. But I think, you kind of have to just guess. I mean, you mentioned you have sources where you have years and years of goodwill built up. They're not going to BS you. They know that they're not going to use you. I think newer sources or sources with something, the biggest thing always is when a team is trying to get rid of either a player or a coach. And they're going to, I think it's a Larry David phrase, foist. They're going to foist you. And they're trying to, like, so I won't say the coach, but I had a GM text me a couple of years ago about their defensive coordinator. And he said, this DC would be amazing for the USC job. And I was like, no, he wouldn't. What are you talking about? And then a couple months later, the DC moved on. But it's like, I think they wanted me to put out so-and-so would be a perfect fit for USC. And then USC calls them. And then their problem is solved. Whether they had a multi-year contract or they just wanted a clean ending, whatever it is, that's when you look at it and you go, you have to be your own harshest critic, or else you end up sending a tweet saying so-and-so would be a great fit to be a Trojan.
All right, give me the hot NFL team this year.
I love Denver. And I know...
wait, that's 2 loves. Like, you love Denver.
I think Denver, when I look around, I think about the Eagles and how one day we woke up and they had the best roster in football and they were undeniable and probably the Super Bowl favorites next year, right? It's because you kept stacking talent. When I look at Denver, I think in maybe next year, they're going to be close to that level. And I think this year they're going to be a double-digit win team that I think probably will get Super Bowl buzz going into this season. I think they're probably a year away from that. But I love what Bo Nix was able to do with Sean Payton. I don't know what he would have been able to do behind Colorado's offensive line, but that's not the question here. And then I think that the way they've built the trenches, again, Eagles-wise, the offensive line is great. The defense keeps stacking talent. Barron was an awesome pick in the first round. R.J. Harvey was a reach for UCF, but again, Sean Payton knows what to do with running backs. He loves contact. He has speed. So I'm looking at this Denver team, and I'm saying, why can't this team compete right now? Now, to answer my own question, the Chargers are also going to be quite good. I loved their draft, and I love Justin Herbert. I think Denver, though, is a half step ahead right now in that division, with obviously the Chiefs being number 1. I think all 3 of them have the chance to be really good this year.
But Vegas' hot team, the Chicago Bears, more money bet on the Bears in the last 24 hours.
So I see that. I think that they answered so many of the... So Caleb Williams last year had the most unblocked pressures and sacks in the history of next-gen stats. So that's like a decade of data, is that no one had gotten a guy in their face where literally the offensive line had no idea what they were doing. And I look at it as maybe the dumbest plan in history or modern football history. Caleb Williams had one flaw. He held on to the ball too long. So what do you do if you're the Bears? You give him one of the worst offensive lines in football. How is that going to work? How is that ever going to work? Well, it didn't. It didn't. He got killed. And they were 64 sacks last year. And so they go out and they probably overpay for some guys, but that's okay. Again, we're not cosplaying GMs here. We just need this to work, right? If we're the Bears. And so the front is settled. The defense is going to be better. I liked what they did. I thought Luther Burden was a really good value pick in round 2. Addressing tight end, maybe you go 2 tight ends with Cole Kmet. I see that. I just don't think they're an NFC contender. Okay, I see them being much better. I see Caleb Williams not getting sacked 64 times. I think they'll probably make the playoffs. I just don't see them in the same way the Broncos do, which is I think in a couple of years the Broncos are going to be Super Bowl contenders.
Thanks for visiting. We appreciate it.
I met you when I was 13 years old at the Tampa Super Bowl. It's great to be here again.
Was I nice to you?
You were very nice. You're going to lose respect for me. I was such a sports media dork that I was at a hotel. I figured it out that somehow you guys were all there. So I just hung out at the elevator bank meeting Sports Center anchors, and I got everybody's autograph. And the only one I can identify now is Eisen because he signed it with his catchphrase, which was, "You got it." So it says, Rich Eisen, Kevin, you got it.
Okay.
So there you go. So thank you for being nice to me.
Do you want an autograph now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. The podcast is called This is Football Podcast, host of Omaha Productions and The Mothership. We'll take a break. We will give you our best and worst of the weekend right after this.